All right. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Let's start with a short invocation. Uh, Om Astoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right. We've got 35 minutes, and I'm going to try and keep on time. So the so the title of my presentation is Divinity and the Power of Karma. I'm not sure why I chose the name, but I had to kind of come up with something fancy. So there you go. I think I quite like that image of the iceberg. I want to acknowledge that I only know the tip of the iceberg as of now, and everything that you're going to hear is going to be pretty high level. And I think the word jnana, why I put it there was, before we started on this journey, gyan for me was uh, knowledge about everything outside, which I knew very little about. And I have a completely different view of gyan today. So I think the word gyan to me is a very important sort of starting point, and we'll come to that as we go forward. How does this move down? Okay, there we go. All right, before we get going, I wanted to sort of put on record my gratitude and thanks to a number of people. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but starting with Swami Dayananda, whose book we're reading, and each page of that book, each word of that book has been a learning experience, fascinating writing by Swamiji. I put down a few quotes, but the one which I kind of particularly relate to is the last one at the bottom, which says, "You want to change others so that you can be free. Never works that way. Accept others and you are free." To me, that was very profound, and it's one of sort of many of his quotable quotes, if you will. Swami Paramarthananda ji, which I think Rajesh and Kishore introduced the group to, his thoughts on karma yoga were again very profound about giving rather than getting. So I think he's somebody whose lectures I've heard, and I've been deeply influenced by a lot of his commentary. Of course, we have our favorite rock star guru, Swami Sarvapriyanandaji, introduced by Rajan to this group. And I picked a quote on Advaita that I read in one of his Aparoksha Anubhutis, which said that reality of non-duality does not contradict the experience or the appearance of duality. I thought that was very deep and profound again. Of course, we have the Gita study group, and I think I took this grab when BP presented. And I think it's captured most of us who are regulars and a few who have been joining us lately. I think Anupama, I think I missed you because you were probably cooking that day. Uh, so yeah, this is an important sort of influence. I think this, in a way, it's an important trigger for my journey. So I do want to acknowledge all of you. And as Swami Vivekananda very nicely said, we are our best teacher. We have to reflect on our experiences and learn from them. And so for everything that we are learning, we have to kind of look inwards and kind of relate it to our experience and see what it means. So everything that you're going to hear in these pages are sort of acquired wisdom, something that I have learned from a variety of sources. All errors are, of course, mine. I've taken the liberty of putting in a few pictures in this presentation, and I hope none of them are offensive to anyone, but if they are, then I'd like to apologize up front. So I'm going to take a look back to my journey, which is prior to 2020, which I've called being spiritually stagnant. Uh, Very early, when I was young, I was somewhat of a religious person, if you will. I used to read or sing to my maternal grandmother, Sri Ram Chandra Kripalu Bhajaman, that bhajan. And you see that that prarthana or the prayer at the bottom, which is from my Kendriya Vidyalaya days, where I used to be a part of the singing choir, quite surprisingly. Um, and and then sort of life went on. We kind of encountered, or at least read about gurus and uh, some godmen and infamous ones, some more real. At that point, spirituality for me was all about sex and scandals, and and then went to Pilani. That was a time when the Mahabharata series was being shown on television, and I remember every Sunday morning you had a crowd in the common room, and I would wander past to get a late breakfast or probably catch some sleep. I never understood why everyone was kind of running around what was supposed to be mythology. And to me, that was myth. And when I said, if it is myth, then why should myth be religion? So I had a very convoluted sort of view of mythology or Mahabharata. So in a way, I was a believer, but I was not sure what I believed in. I just thought I was like a religious person, but pretty warped kind of a thought process. I got into the Grihastha ashram, going forward from college, started to chase success, career, wealth, longevity. Health was pretty much sort of at the back end. I have to say I put in a lot of weight. I used to weigh 90 kilos not so long ago. And, I was in this kind of cycle of raga, which is attachment, shoka, which is a lot of sorrow, and moha, which is being deluded about, who I was and where I was going in life. This is a cycle that Swami Paramatmanandaji kind of really nicely explains in one of his lectures in chapter 2 of the Gita. And at a kind of a high level, I was chasing peace and happiness because that's what were supposed to be the eternal desires. For my weight, I tried to do, when I registered for a gym. My wife is a she believes, she follows the Isha Foundation. She tried to kind of get me into spirituality, and no, it didn't work. I remember in 2017, after our Silver Jubilee celebration, Rajesh set up the meditation group. I very duly joined it, but I never attended any of those sessions till early last year. And more gurus came and went. They were still about sex and spiritual and scandals. So none of that changed until then. And then a couple of things happened. One is my father-in-law passed away, and we went to Bodh Gaya, and I kind of quite liked the whole sort of experience of Bodh Gaya and Buddhism, and quite a contrast with Gaya, which is the Hindu sort of space. And then my boss in 2019, kind of in London of all places, arranged an Art of Living session under the garb of wellness, where we learned about breathing and pranayama. And it got me thinking and reflecting. And, my cynicism kind of moved a little bit towards wanting to know what's going on. And the question about, okay, I want happiness, but then what is happiness? That kind of certainly propped into my head. And I got inquisitive. And there were a number of phrases that I was hearing, about Maya and karma and yoga, and none of these I knew the meaning of. But life just went on. But I was inquisitive, and in this dark sort of space of ignorance, a lot of questions were propping in my mind. Some of them were explicit, some were at the background, and I think they're not dissimilar from what a number of us have probably experienced around who am I, why me, why am I kind of not doing well in life, why am I not more healthier, why am I not better looking, what is religion, what happens after death, why are bad people happy, uh, what am I missing? There's like a million questions which kind of come and go in your head, right? And that's kind of where I was back end of 2019. But the inquisitiveness had kind of gotten to a certain point. And then fast forward to 2020, picture on the left, Rajesh was in Delhi. Sakuba organized a dinner, and VP and I joined. I know VP looks very different in this picture from what he currently is. But it happened end of 2019. Uh, we had a great sort of dinner. I would recommend this place for if you're in Delhi though. But we talked about spirituality, and I think Rajesh on his way back home to the US went through Singapore, where he spent a few hours with Alpana, and that sort of then led to this creation of the Gita study group end of November. And on the 5th of January 2020, we started reading the Bhagavad Gita of Swami Dayananda. Very helpfully, middle of the year, Kishore, I think, urged us to read the Tattva Bodha so that it can help us understand some of the basics around the scriptures and the creation, which was very, very helpful. And of course, Rajesh's book came out again, I think, mid-year, which we all had the benefit of reading. So a lot of that happened. I have to say, to begin with, this was all OHT. January, February, possibly into March and April. I mean, we were reading probably a couple of pages a day or a week, uh, maybe 2 or 3 pages. But I was like completely lost in terms of what is this ignorance we're talking about? What kind of knowledge? Who is this Brahman now? I mean, we had heard of Brahmin, but who's this Brahman? And, it was all too abstract. I mean, even those 2 or 3 pages were just hard to read. They were so abstract in some ways, at least to me. And I would just doze off like halfway. I wouldn't even complete those 2 pages. So it was like crazy. But, come sort of May, June, start to get a hang of it. And, where I got to was, progressively you realize Gita is a very structured piece of literature, if you can call it one. And it has all the answers. I mean, if you don't get it, it is our inadequacy, not Gita. Gita has all the answers, and it's a question of trying to understand it. And it's probably meant to be read over and over again because there are nuances within nuances. Also, a lot of people think of Gita as a religious kind of book. It is a religious sacred book in some ways, but more importantly, it's a very deep, practical, logical, just wisdom. It's just real life wisdom. Something that dawned on me as we kind of got into it and got totally hooked into reading it. And we were reading a lot more in the later days. And finally, I wanted to make a point around the timing. I think the timing has to be important. I mean, just think about it. I mean, we had COVID and, just starting off in Jan, Feb, and we started this exercise end of 2019. So in some ways, this was kind of, an interesting time when we all started. And I have to say, 2020 has been somewhat tough. And the fact that we've been reading the Gita has kind of kept me going and feeling sort of that, there is more to it than just kind of living life the way we did for so long. The whole book is full of aha moments. I mean, every page, every paragraph in some ways has something new and something enlightening to tell us. But I'm going to focus on 5 big sort of aha moments, if you will, in this presentation in the next few pages. So the first one is around who am I? And I was, I have to say at the beginning when this whole concept of who am I was being discussed, I didn't know what we were talking about. I would get lost. I would get some strands of it. I would kind of go back and say, I actually get it. And then next day I would say, I don't get it. But there's this story about King Janaka and sage Ashtavakra, which really caught my attention and kind of imprinted this whole concept in my head very strongly. And I won't go into the whole story. I'm sure most of you have kind of heard it or read it. But basically, it's about King Janaka, who is asleep, and in his dream, he is invaded and captured by his opponent. He has nothing left with him. He is a pauper. He is on the streets, penniless. He has no money, no food. He's just miserable, and he just wakes up to a cold sweat. And he finds him in the palace all intact. But he asks this very profound question, which in Hindi is ye sach ya wo sach. Is this true or is that true? And no one has the answer, and a lot of people try to figure it out. But incidentally, sage Ashtavakra is passing by and he understands the whole question, and he asks the king, were you in the dream? And Janaka replies, yes. Are you in the current waking state? And the king replies, yes. And then he says, na ye sach, na wo sach, sirf tu hi sach, which is you are the only ultimate reality. And that to me kind of just blew my mind. I mean, there are so many phrases that you see on this page around what is the whole concept of Brahman, the magician, the Akarta, the Asangha. There are a million kind of words to describe that, if you will. Sachidananda is a big one. Satyam Jnanam Ananta Brahman is a very, very popular one. But the one which has kind of what really captured my imagination was the last shloka from the Nirvana Shatakam, which goes as Aham Nirvikalpo Nirakar Rupo Vibhurvyapya Sarvatra Sarvendriyanam Sadame Samatvam Namuktir Nabandha Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. This is in two lines captures the entire essence of who am I. And I have to say, I found it extremely empowering. I mean, I felt at ease with my limitations. I felt a sense of purnatvam, just understanding it. And, I felt more than sort of the insignificant person that I had been for my 50 years of existence, right? And of course, there are the Mahavakyas, which are, again, amazing. I mean, it talks about Tattvamasi. You are that. Not only Tattvamasi, Aham Brahma Asmi. I am also that. And we are all that one single consciousness. I mean, this was something to me was most amazing and mind-blowing. I love this thing which Ramana Maharshi said when asked, how do you treat others? He just said, there are no others. We are all just one consciousness. So to me, this is like aha moment one, right? The big aha moment one. The second one is around karma yoga. And I'd heard of karma yoga forever in my life, that we have to be a karma yogi. I had no idea what that meant. For the longest time, I used to think that karma yoga is about just working hard. I mean, that was my sort of perception of karma yoga. But when I read about it, it's not very, very complex. It just says simply that I am what I am today because of what I did in the past, and I will be what I will be tomorrow or in the future of what I do today. It's no more complicated than that, right? And it's all about sort of just doing the right karma, inculcating the right virtues, having the right attitude. And it's, if you look at the quote down the middle, which I think is amazing, which is, you cannot do harm to someone because someone has done harm to you. You will pay just like they will. So there is no direct settling of scores, right? You do bad to me, I do bad to you, we both are going to suffer. It's not like it's back to square one. To me, it was a very eye-opening sort of thought. And, if you think about the whole sort of karmic cycle, I mean, it is brutally fair, it is transparent, there are no exceptions. It's a rule which works, right? And therefore, to me, karma yoga is kind of sits as a foundation to whatever we do in life. I mean, all the impurities of life, the malaha, is related to karma yoga. If I can be a karma yogi, then the next stage of removing the vikshepa, which is distractions, or kind of moving from ajnana to removal of samshaya or doubts, or being established in jnana, is a relatively straightforward path, if you will. I mean, nothing is straightforward, but I think karma yoga is where the rubber hits the road, right? And to me, therefore, this is something which is very important. I just wanted to kind of draw your attention to the right hand, the rear view mirror, right? We all kind of say, life is just too long, and let's kind of live today. But how you live today affects your future. And if you look at what it says objects in the mirror are closer than you think or realize. I can't read it clearly, but the fact is that the future will come, and it will come back to bite you if you don't do the right karma. So to me, this is like a big one. And just on the same theme, and I know we've discussed this for a long time, and I think we had a full session on the whole debate between destiny and free will. Do we, is it destiny, or do we have free will? And I went away from that sort of session totally confused. I mean, I kind of kept thinking for a long time, what is this all about? I mean, if everything is predestined, then what are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing, right? And I remember Alpana had made a interesting comment at that time. She said, there is no destiny of freedom. There is only, of free will. There is only freedom, and freedom of choices. So we are presented with choices and we make decisions. So how we live, what profession we choose, whether we are fit or not, whether we eat the right kind of food, are we evolving in the right direction spiritually? That's the freedom that we have. So we make our own destiny. The destiny is not made by anyone else. Our karmas will make our destiny tomorrow. So it's linked to the previous page around karma yoga. It is, I mean, our destiny is what we do today. So it's about freedom of choices. That's probably the most important. And the reason I put that picture again on the right is we met that day. We had a choice to make whether to go down the spiritual path or not, and we chose to go down the spiritual path. We could have easily had a nice meal and gone home, but we didn't do it. And I think that is kind of, to me, the essence of freedom relative to destiny versus free will, which I think is a bogus debate in some ways. The third one is around God. And again, this is something that, again, I have agonized over it for a long time. Ever since we got introduced, I think, to chapter, I can't remember, 7, 8, 9. This is something which kind of stayed in my mind for a very long time as to what is God? Who is God? I mean, who's sitting up there and telling, doing everything? And then you realize, and I remember I wrote a short blog after like a long time of rumination. And what you realize is that God is nothing but a higher being. I mean, they're also jivas at some level, right? And because it is such an abstract concept, you start with the concept of Ekarupa Ishvara, which is your Ishta Devata or your Saguna Brahma Ishvara, because you can relate to it, and that could be a Krishna or a Ayappa or a Shiva or whoever, right? Once you kind of get that concept of God clearly in your mind, you graduate to the next stage where you kind of say, you see God in everything, right? And that is the concept of Aneka Rupa Ishvara, which is the concept of Vishwarupa Darshan, which again, I think we read in the second part of the book. And finally, you graduate to this concept of a Rupa or Nirguna Ishvara. So in some ways, we've been created by that ultimate power, and we have then gone on to create God. But in some ways, the concept of God is like an anchor who we need to get to our goal of Nirguna Ishvara. But because it's an abstract topic, we need to go through a step. But in my mind, as I think about it, God is only somebody who is kind of managing this massive, complex creation, and that at the end of the day, there is oneness, and there is only Nirguna Ishvara, which is the ultimate goal. Because we don't understand Nirguna Ishvara, and it's hard, we need to go through a step-by-step approach. I think the other one which really caught my attention was around prayer. Why do we pray, right? And the way I have kind of gotten to the point is that prayer is really a good karma, right? And Swami Dayananda kind of, says it very nicely. If you look at the quote at the bottom, it says, we need to know luck is also earned and not imposed. There is no unearned grace. So there is nothing like good luck. Good luck is basically good karma of the past, period, right? It doesn't happen like by chance or somebody deciding to push a button and saying, okay, let me be good to this guy, right? Obviously, prayer helps because that's also good karma. But ultimately, your good luck is good karma of the past, which is earned. There is nothing free here, right? So I found this very important. And obviously, the heading is profound. Again, attributed to Swami Dayananda, where he says that some religions say there is only one God. Vedanta says there is only God. The rest of it is all Maya, of course. Just on the same point, I mean, experiencing divinity in everyday life, that second step around Vishwarupa Darshan, I don't get it. I mean, if you see some of the images that I've stuck in there, I mean, there is some really nice images and there's some disturbing images. there is kind of squalid conditions, poverty. At the same time, you have some blooming flowers and lovely rivers and seas. And how do you sort of see divinity in everyday life? I think it's very hard. I mean, I find it extremely hard. But my view is that at the end of the day, karma yoga is a good way to understand and explain that conundrum as to how can the whole world be divinity. I'm still kind of not there, but it's something which is worth reflecting upon. The fourth one is around our favorite topic of 2KLM3, the Shaduripus. And they're the six enemies of, or six internal enemies of the jivas. And Adi Shankara kind of has a shloka on it, and he calls them the dacoits residing within our own body. The image on the right is interesting. I won't go through the whole thing, but we learned about there are animals and birds which sort of depict each of these Shaduripus or enemies. And I'll just talk about the one around the owl. The owl is somebody who cannot see during the day, meaning it cannot see the obvious. And that is essentially, it is deluded or delusion, and that is moha. So the owl is the animal which is kind of linked to moha. Similarly, there's a whole backstory around all the others. Sister Shivani in the talk, I think a couple of weeks back, talked about natural samskaras. And each of these Shadripus actually have a opposite natural samskara. So all we need to do is to move away from acquired samskaras to the natural samskaras. So for anger, there is ahimsa. For jealousy, there is compassion. So there is a natural sort of place to go with respect to each of these Shadripus. And so gravitating towards natural samskaras is the way to go. I have that picture of Duryodhana there. And the reason I put in there was that Duryodhana is an example of somebody who has all these six attributes or negative attributes. But if you look inwards, each of us in some shape or form, all of us have a Duryodhana in us. In a way, we all have struggled with each of these 2KLM challenges, right? And therefore the goal has to be, how do we cull the Duryodhana in each of us, right? It's a busy slide. I don't intend to go through all of it, but what you see at the bottom is the sadhana chatushtayam, which is the foundation of spirituality in some ways. And what I put on the left and the right is, on the left, you've got the 20 values, which are in shlokas 8 to 12 of chapter 13 of the Gita. And I'm trying to actually learn them by heart because they are very, very powerful. I kind of highlighted 3 of them. Amanitvam, which is around humility and transcending the I. Arjavam, I find very amazing, something that I struggle with. I mean, and just think about how many times we say what we think and do what we say. The alignment of the speech, the action, and thoughts is Arjavam. And I think if we can get to a point where all 3 are aligned, I think that'd be a huge way forward. And the third one I picked up was Vairagyam, which is around dispassion from sense objects and not being addicted to them. But equally on the right, you would see the Ashtanga Yoga tree of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And within the tree, there are the yamas and the niyamas, which in a way sort of mirror exactly what the Bhagavad Gita is talking about. And I realized that, understanding the whole concept of Jnana Yoga and who am I and who's God and Karma Yoga is the easy bit. You can kind of get there sooner rather than later, right? I think the challenge is, practicing and imbibing these virtues, which will kind of get you or put you on the path to Sthita Prajna, which can take several lifetimes. And I remember last week we talked about some big numbers. It can take a long, long time because this is the hard yards, if you will. And the last one is around Vedanta in practice, my favorite topic in some ways, Chaturamasa. I put some pictures on the left to entice all of you to try and think about it. But this is sadhana chatushtayam in practice. It taught me vairagya, it taught me tiksha, which is forbearance, controlling your mind and senses. It's not a fast. A lot of people think vratam is a fast. Vratam is actually a sankalp or a vow, right? And the sankalp in Chaturmasa is not about fasting, it's about eating right, which is eating more sattvic, less rajasic, no tamasic if possible. And so you eat only what you want, what your body requires. You focus on plant-based foods. You avoid alcohol and try and get intoxicated on the wonders of the creation instead. And you avoid tamasic food. So it's not a very complicated thing. And if you see on the picture on the left, there are lots of good foods that you can have, keeping those principles in mind. I think one of the things I learned from Chaturmasa as a practice was that the fasting, both intermittent and Ekadashi, were very helpful to help with digestion and detox. And finally, I don't think there's any kind of one way of doing it. I think it's each their own. At the end of the day, food's an offering to the god, and you see the pre-food prayer that I've stuck on the right, absolute right-hand side. But in summary, it's all about eating mindfully, avoiding, not getting dependent on food, and then eating with compassion. So it's a fantastic practice. So I'd welcome sort of anyone who wants to join that, to participate in it. Personally, for me, I have kind of Chaturmasa combined with Hatha Yoga has done wonders to me. I'm kind of now back to what I used to weigh when I was in Pilani, so I feel good about it. And so it works. The bottom line is that I think it works, and that's very important. On to my last slide. So 1 year, what's changed? I think I'm still a spiritual infant, but I just wanted to put down some observations. I don't think it's what's changed in me, but these are merely some observations which I thought I'd share with the group. The first one is that I kind of appreciate the depth and wisdoms contained in our scriptures. I mean, I have a long, long way to go, but I think I have a reasonably good sense of what our scriptures are trying to do. And I'm hooked, so that's good news. The second one I think is interesting. I was thinking about it as prior to this, if I sat down and talked about, my faith in Hinduism, and I had no idea what Hinduism meant. I used to be somewhat defensive about, in a conversation about, my faith. And I'm no longer defensive. I mean, Vedanta is very scientific, very logical, very sensible. It's compatible with all faiths. And I certainly feel proud of Vedanta as a philosophy. I don't know about Hinduism, but Vedanta as a philosophy certainly kind of resonates. I also realized that relationship with God is actually a very personal one. I mean, there is no one path to the truth. There are several paths, but there's only one truth. And sometimes I actually wonder whether, religion should be a public matter in the first place. But I guess a lot of the problems it faces in the world is because religion is a very public subject. But it's a very personal sort of choice around God, because ultimately your goal is singular. The fourth one is again important for me, because I realized that you cannot be spiritual without being ethically good. I mean, the first half of the year, I was like, okay, I can be spiritual. I mean, I understand who I am. I understand who's God, so I can be spiritual. But jnana yoga without karma yoga is no good, is what I've learned. You have to do the right karmas. You can get theoretical knowledge about jnana yoga, but that will not take you anywhere, is my sort of conclusion in a way. I'm trying to judge people less. I still judge a lot of people, and we all do, and I regret that. But the whole attitude of, my karma, your karma. So, I'm doing my karma, he's doing his or her karma. And the whole sort of concept of pratipaksha bhavana that Kishore kind of spoke about, it gives me peace. I mean, I feel at peace when I think about that. I think this is the point which Manu had mentioned in one of the conversations, but you realize, particularly with the COVID and everything else, that, you have to focus more on your relatively small needs rather than your never-ending desires and wants. That's kind of loud and clear. This one is something which VP spoke about as well, about seva bhav. And I was kind of quite, I was reading about seva is something where you you do seva by bowing down, because it is the giver's good fortune. It is not the receiver's good fortune, it is the giver's good fortune. So I think seva bhav is something that I did some of, but I kind of feel more inclined to do that going forward. Spoke about Chaturmasa. I think Sattvic lifestyle is worth cultivating. I have no doubt about that. I think I've been sort of regularly chanting, some of the shlokas in the morning, doing hatha yoga, pranayama, doing some prayers, and it definitely gives me positive energy. I think the 10th point is something which I have to confess. My wife is big on rituals, and I had a lot of contempt for it, I will admit. But I realize now that my contempt for rituals is a manifestation of my ignorance. It is my spiritual ahamkara, and I need to get away from it. I am still not there. I think I have an appreciation of the rituals, that it has some meaning, as opposed to earlier as to this is just stupid and silly, but I am still not there, but I hope to get there at some point. I've been inspired to learn Sanskrit. VP and I have done a short session. It's very deep and profound. The linkage between Sanskrit and spirituality is Indian spirituality, Vedanta, is very deep, and I certainly want to read more of the scriptures. Krishna has kind of suggested a couple of books on the Mahabharata, which I'm going to pick up, but that's kind of my next step. And the last one where I have failed until now is meditation, which has been a struggle. I have been unable to focus. I suddenly realize, Kishore, that chitta vritti nirodha is harder than it sounds. And it has not worked until now, but that's all right. We'll get there at some point. So those are the kind of just some reflections from the past 1 year. So there you go. I think we all have a human birth. I heard that, I read that human birth is the only place where you accumulate karmas or new karmas, and I think we got to make best use of our human sort of avatar. Yeah, I mean, I still get mad. I hope to laugh more often. This is obviously the picture that all of us have seen on the right. But overall, I'm glad I'm part of this group, and thank you everyone for helping me along on this journey. Dhanyavad.